Hi everyone, and welcome to another webinar in the series Restart 21, organized by the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom in partnership with EconomyNext and Echelon magazine. Today, we look at a very critical industry to our economy, one that has suffered the most during the pandemic, that's tourism. And we examine the recovery of tourism and whether it will be a path to prosperity for Sri Lanka. I'm delighted to welcome three eminent panelists. I'm going to just read one of their many designations because all of them are very well known. And if you need further information, it's just a Google search away. Joining me today is Dileep Mudadeniya, who is the head of marketing and VP marketing and events at Cinnamon Resorts and Hotels. I have my good old friend Shiromal Cooray, who is the chairperson of the Jetwing group. And last but not least, Vickum Nawagamuwage, who is the founder and CEO of Santani Wellness and Resorts. Welcome to all three of you, and delighted to have you here today. I'm going to start off with you, Dileep, because you have even a background in the tourism board as well, plus corporate sector as well. As the industry rebuilds, different countries and different cities are positioning themselves, differently. I can see that Venice as a city does not want as many tourists as they, had before, while Thailand is looking at, not looking at quantity but quality. How should Sri Lanka, as a country, position itself in the post-COVID era? And also, more importantly, because our webinars are targeted towards large corporates and also SMEs, how should individual properties position themselves in the post-pandemic era?
So basically, I think there are two questions. One is in terms of positioning of properties and the positioning of the destination. I think where Sri Lanka is concerned, we are in a time in terms of the product life cycle, the destination plays a prominent role. And in tourism, in most cases, in most destinations, the destination is the deciding factor and then the hotel becomes secondary factor. This actually is an exception to a few hotel properties that are even in Sri Lanka and few others where they actually been attracted by the hotel, but this is actually an exception than the norm. So the most important thing with the destination positioning is that, today, if you ask any investor that they wouldn't necessarily want to build a hotel in the country, the reason is that the ROI that we are looking for and the returns that we can get is quite not out there from a majority perspective. We have, of course, places like Santani, which is an exception, and then you can't build such hotel all the time in a large number of where the volume is concerned. So on the other hand, if you look at it, today, most parts of Sri Lanka is your ARRs is around $80 to $100. If you compare Maldives, it's about $300, $350 easily. So that your return on investment needs to be looked at it. And if you're building, such large properties, or at least 100-room hotel, even 75-room hotels, the destination positioning is very important where we will understand the type of caliber of people that can draw into the country. Having said that, currently out of this, if you look at booking.com, the last count I did about 1.5 months ago, we actually had it post-COVID, before any pandemic situation arisen in the country. It was, we were looking at around 63,000 rooms, approximately, all categories, where the country is concerned. So only about 5,000 to 7,000 numbers are the 4 to 5 star category. So out of the 63,000 rooms, almost a good 60% are below 3-star category. So if you look at it, predominantly Sri Lanka is a hotel, is a destination which is out there, which is not positioned properly, where if you look at the entire destination attributes are concerned. I'm not talking about the hotel rate, which is determining the type of tourist that comes in. It is about what we call, especially in the post-pandemic, this term has emerged, we call purpose-driven tourism. Any destination that means tourism has one single purpose, or the main purpose is foreign exchange revenue. So you can get 100 people at $10, or you can get 2 people at $500. So it's what do you want to do as a destination. So I think that positioning of the destination is very important. And then while it's inevitable that you have all kinds of tourists coming into a destination, because we have a product is such that is inevitable, you'll end up in having such tourists as well coming in. But we need to ensure that in terms of what we offer, in terms of what we have, that we position ourselves into value-driven tourism, so the purpose-driven tourism aspect of it. That doesn't mean that the tourists are coming for $1,000. You may have seen Bill Gates going to one of the destinations and stayed in a almost like a cowshed kind of thing, have some experience in $50. So, but of course, what they do is they actually pay millions of rupees for experiences. So it doesn't have to be a 5-star accommodation, what I'm thinking of. It's about having right experiences, and then people are the right audience to ensure that, we get the right revenue to the country, because otherwise, if you look at it, our airports, our road network, our transportation, everything is actually made out of taxpayers' money. And if they don't get enough return, that means, we are subsidizing that for the people who don't pay sufficient revenue. I'm talking about some of the places that we have, beautiful locations that we have. It costs us even $2-3, and the people come and spend that. So we don't want to be positioned as that. So it's very important that the attributes of the destination properly communicated, the destination marketing as a subject to be practiced, and then we have professional people in running those places coming and working on it. And then also to ensure that we have the right ingredients and consistency in the campaigns that are coming in. So recently, I think the last year, the cabinet has approved the 5-year program. That's very commendable. And now we need to see the implementation of those plans and then drive a proper campaign. All the destinations that are doing well in the world, if you take it Incredible India, if you take it Malaysia, Thailand, Maldives, these people have actually, what they have done is they have a consistent communication campaign based on the product attributes that they have communicated. The low end of the people whose pay less will come in anyway, that is inevitable, as I mentioned earlier. But what we need to do is we need to ensure that we position that destination correctly through a consistent communication to the target audience, especially the B2C campaigns, etc. So that's one. Second part of the question was how do the individual properties? Yes, individual properties can do a lot of stuff. We don't have to wait until the government do that. We can have our own communication campaigns. We have some beautiful properties in the country. Of course, Santani has won many awards. Some of the Jetwing places like Dileep has been largely known among the journalists and won many awards. In Sri Lanka, with Cinnamon, Bent to the Beach, or Lodge, Cinnamon Lodge, have also won many accolades in the past. So these individual properties can add a lot of value. So what we need to do is, we need to have our own marketing programs, and then also we can actually position our own things separately. But if the destination has overall positioning, that helps a lot. It is like, you would rather buy, if you want to go to a destination, you won't necessarily go to Iran or Afghanistan or any other country, but you would rather go to a very established destination, and that's which has a reputation. So the place reputation, the place branding will certainly help the individual properties to market and position those properties also individually. And if the absence of destination marketing or the place branding, the efforts that the individual properties have to put is going to be enormous, and it can be done. And we have some of the properties have shown, but the task is very, very difficult to achieve.
Yeah, thanks, Dileep. I think particularly for SMEs, that would be a challenge. Shiromal, Vickum, you would like to add something to the positioning of the country and individual properties as well?
Yeah, I think I agree with Dileep, but I think we must also first figure out where we want to position Sri Lanka. Is it at the high end, the budget, or is it a hybrid? Because I think there are lots of other factors also that come into play. The product we are carrying. Then, if we are to employ a lot of people, then I guess we need to have more tourists in. So there are lots of issues, but it's such a beautiful country. It's a pity that if we are not attracting the high-end tourists. So it's very difficult, I think, to balance all these. But we should decide where we are positioning and clearly, market it to that market. And of course, the rest will follow, people go to Mauritius, Bhutan. It's expensive, but there are also others who go. So I think we need to decide on that and carry on accordingly.
Just to add, I agree with both of you as well, but I think Sri Lanka is not one. It's not needs to be positioned as one idea, because we have multiple products within our sub-products within Sri Lanka, from beaches to the hill country to the wildlife to the ancient cities, and and these all have different markets and different price points. So all three needs to kind of combine together, and we can create easily like 5 different products and positions around those products at different price points. So I think all three, the price point, the destination, the product, all three needs to come together for us to do a proper positioning of the country.
Wonderful thoughts. One aspect that has we've been plaguing the industry, particularly since I think these attacks in 2019, which is the financial situation of the industry. That's something our corporates and even SMEs need to focus on. So I come to you, Shiromal, because you have a finance background in addition to a rich legacy in tourism. In your view, what are the main financial aspects the industry needs to focus on, and what sort of support does the industry need from a financial perspective going forward from the government and even other stakeholders, both locally and overseas as well?
Yeah, so I think the first point of concern is the amount of debt you're carrying. It depends. And so obviously there's a moratorium which has been granted, and that's going to expire in July 2022. But then there's the amount of interest that has accrued over these almost 2 years. And so that needs to be paid, because there is a clamor or request from the industry, from the government to give some relief for the interest, but there is nothing constructive that has happened yet. So if that doesn't come through, which is also a difficult ask, obviously, then one has to pay the capital plus is a true debt. So obviously one will have to go in for a restructuring. The hotel or the travel company or the leasing, the chauffeur guide who has a vehicle lease, they'll have to go to the bank or the leasing company and ask it to be restructured. So then we have now the issue of increasing interest rates. So that is a concern. If you're restructuring, at what rate will you restructure? So these are all concerns that one has. And then banks themselves are carrying very high NPA ratios. So how will the tourism industry add, so very, very complicated situation. And I think if that can be sorted out, retaining talent has also become a big problem. Talent is very scarce now. As somebody said, it's very difficult because we are losing skilled, good people to competitors, to foreign other countries like the Middle East or the Maldives, who are paying very high dollar salaries, so they like to earn in dollars. So we need to obviously then pay higher salaries as well to retain these people. And now with the momentum of bookings coming in, people need to take in more staff because you have to retain the normal service levels. So which means you're adding on more costs. So your working capital needs to be controlled. And then there's this looming, will another variant become a disaster? Will there be travel restrictions? Will there be slowdown? And then what happens? Are we carrying too much overheads? So it's a very, very difficult situation for one to be in right now. And I don't think anybody should envy somebody in the tourism industry right now. So the other issue also is most of the hotels are carrying dollar loans. And now there's a restriction in amount of dollars you can keep as well. So what happens? I don't know. I don't think there's clarity if you can retain the dollars you earn now to pay your debts in 2022. Because though you don't have to pay the debts now, you have to pay it at some point. So one has to collect some dollars. So I don't know. So these are a lot of issues that are there. And then the dollar the rupee is losing value. So if one has to convert, so lots of financial implications. Then some hotels need refurbishing. There have been some hotels which have been closed. So when you're struggling to keep your working capital going, and if the banks are not going to lend you any more money, how do you do the refurbishing? Because so lots of issues, and of course we will find answers, because tourism, as you know, has been a very resilient industry. Answers will come, but at the moment it's a little concerning. Yeah. Thanks, Imran.
Thanks, Shiromal. Dileep, Vickum, anything to add? Shiromal is also director of a large commercial bank, so she's aware of the challenges, rather than being on one side of the equation. That is why I put her on the spot. Dileep, Vickum?
I want to add a little bit to what Shiromal said. All the issues, she articulated, but why we are not seeing solutions fast enough is the concern right now, because what we need is solutions now. And I think the industry and the government or the country as a whole doesn't understand the impact of tourism. Just to give some numbers, I mean, right now we have 42,000 registered rooms in SLTDA. If you are to double our tourism arrivals from, let's say, 2018-19, which was about 2 million tourists, to go to 4 million tourists, we need another about 30,000, 38,000 rooms just to have at 60-65% capacity, right? So 38,000 rooms at about 150,000 per key as an investment. You're talking about $7 billion. And our financial crisis can go right away. But then comes to the point what Dileep mentioned earlier about ROI. Why people are not investing in Sri Lanka is the ROI is not good enough. But ROI is not necessarily a factor of the pricing itself, but our construction costs are comparatively very high compared to like Thailand and India or Malaysia. So some of the things we need to do is like we are protecting industries like cement and steel. And our revenue from those industries has been about 500 million in the last 2 years. So we are sacrificing about $5 billion worth of investment to protect 500 million of investment. And this hasn't, I don't think the government understands this and the opportunity we have. So we can easily get Sri Lanka out of the financial issues we are in as a country through the tourism industry. If we can understand these numbers and correct those, because the product is there. The base product is there, but there are these certain issues that are not making it attractive, and if we and it's very, very easy fixes, and the banks also should think of it that way, and be very lenient with the industry so that we can then take forward the country.
Yeah, I think I fully agree. Currently, I mean, we got about it was mentioned that around 60,000 tourists in the month of November, but the idea is that in December, if you get 150,000 tourists, the current infrastructure that we have will not be able to handle them. There aren't enough vehicles to handle tourism because a lot of people who are having those vehicles, they sold, or at least, some lease companies have taken it, and there's a scarcity of that. In terms of the rooms, that to get back, these hotels will need a working capital. I know most of the rooms, I mean, one of our hotels, we found that, 60 or 70 televisions were not working all of a sudden. So you need certain capex to come in, big item. I mean, some of the larger players, because of their borrowing power and the assets, etc., will be able to manage. But a lot of small to medium enterprises and some nice boutique villas, hotels, which has a lot of reputation among the travelers, they might not be able to, in the short to medium term, be able to have that capital to come back. So if the industry is coming back, they'll need this. And as a result, it's today, access to borrowing is very, very difficult task, because this industry is also not seems to be very favorable among the banking sector also, even though we have not reached the threshold of the maximum allowed borrowing for industry. So we have to sort that out. It looks like overall, most of the countries that are going through having these financial issues, and Sri Lanka is also no better. And I think the banking sector seems to be not being able to handle it and come out with a solution, which the industry was asking, and the Hotel Association is also asking right throughout.
I think reimagining how we position the industry in terms of the rest of the economy is something that I think policymakers need to look at. I've seen that the new strategic policy document of the tourism board released a few days ago is very ambitious in terms of getting $10 billion, but it's quite silent in terms of how many rooms and then how they're going to go about it. So I think there's a lot of ambition there. Hopefully, our stakeholders will pay attention to the potential of the industry. Vickum, I'd like to move to another angle of the recovery and something that other countries have been focusing on much more than we have, which is understanding the guests very intimately, right? Using data and the whole journey in terms of their travel, and also the post-travel and then the follow-up as well. How should the industry focus on intimately understanding the traveler, the modern traveler, and what can we do to make sure that they are delighted at every point of interaction?
Look, data today is most valuable commodity in the world. It's not petrol, it's not gold, it's not oil. Data is the most valuable commodity. So if anyone is not focusing on that, whatever the industry, y'all are missing out. So we have to focus, and unfortunately, I don't think the tourism industry is focusing and taking in new approaches in understanding customers, or even evaluating customers, creating new channels through digital media. Luckily for us, we started with a very focused digital strategy, and even before identifying customers, going to markets was our key success digitally. And even today, we get about 70% of our guests as direct bookings, and travel agents and tour operators only provide about 20%, and the rest is like online booking.coms type of stuff. Which means like you're saving 20%, 80 to 20% on more, about 70% of our bookings. So that made us actually profitable much faster than the typical industry player. So given that, first of all, there are so many media and how you use that media, there's no one formula. It again depends on understanding, first of all, your product and who you want to serve. And because without knowing that, if you just go digitally, you will be spending so much money without targeting or going to the right customer. So first you need to understand who your customer is, what your product is, and then use different digital platforms to get there. That's from a marketing point of view. One example I will give from Santani's point of view, like we don't talk about Twitter in the industry. When we talk about digital marketing, we talk of Instagram and Pinterest and Facebook. But one of the first things we did was to focus on Twitter, because this is even before we started building. When we had the concept, what the difference in Twitter is, all the media uses Twitter. Every journalist has a Twitter handle. So what we looked at was, we looked at all the people who wrote about Sri Lanka in the past 2 years when we were launching, and all of them had a Twitter handle. Then we wrote a little conceptual thing, a 10-liner, and pitched it to all of them without any cost. And then some of them actually picked it us from that. And then by the time we opened, they came. And then we had some amazing PR after that. So things like that, which are zero cost, works. It's just understanding the different elements and going about the right way for you. Again, it won't be the same thing for everyone else. You need to have a story as well in that example. So that's quite interesting, and also from all the digital media, from all the social media platforms, there's so much of data on trends. So without even, I'm not even going to Google Analytics. Even before going to Google Analytics, you can understand tremendous amount of trends happening in social media on just what people are talking, and there are tools that analyze these trends as well. So using those things, we can understand what people are looking for, especially now in a post-pandemic world. There is a clear understanding of space, the need for space and wellness, and being the best you can when you go on travel. But apart from that, there are so many nuances that you can get through these different channels. And then obviously Google is the number one kind of data source. You have to daily monitor what's happening with your Google accounts, and also you have to have the right tools at the back end. There are so many analytical tools that you can plug your website into that analyze the data that's coming from different sources. So all those tools needs to be there, and then you can create much better understanding of your customer, and then when you understand your customer, your communication gets better, and then obviously your results get better.
Anything to add on using data, Dileep, Shiromal?
Yeah, I think data is obviously very important, and as Vickum said, if you disregard it, I think it's at your own peril. But whatever AI tools you have and all of that, ultimately you can know your customer, but if you don't deliver, then I think there is no point. So I think both should marry together. You should know the customer very intimately, definitely, but you must also make sure your service definitely matches with the knowledge, that's so, yeah. So no question about it. Data is important.
I think the people who have understood the value of data have already invested in big time, and we as a group have really invested and looking at creation of already created a separate vertical, and looking at integrating of the data across the entire group, etc. So it's very important that just to understand and then pinpoint in terms of the customer expectations, who our customer is, where they're coming from. And we have seen as a result, our own brand.com is performing very well in terms of giving exactly what people need and require. So it's a very complex thing, and there are many tools, etc. So I mean, Sri Lanka has to go a long way in this, and then we need a lot of expertise into that. And this is an area actually we can drive a lot of revenue to companies and with a fraction of a cost. So its importance is no doubt, but I think the question is that how to do it. A lot of people struggling with that. I think especially it's something which any NGOs or any projects that are looking at. It's very important that have a project of how to get the most of our stakeholders start using this data, and what are the tools that are available to make use of the mining of those data, and then working with experimenting as well as using it for marketing and promotion is an area which is not tapped yet. So it remains as a low-hanging fruit for most of the properties, and people who have harnessed this and understood and created strategies, I think they have a lot to learn from them.
A general question for all of you, and that's the first of the two I have. And this involves talent, something that even Shiromal alluded to at the beginning. I think tourism is a service industry, and I think there has been a lot of challenges in terms of retaining talent with so many different forces where they have opportunities as well. What advice do you have for stakeholders, both for large corporates and also SMEs, on attracting, training, and also retaining talent so that they are positioned, well, in the post-pandemic era? I think anyone can start.
I think talent acquisition is the key, because you must make sure as much as possible to get the right person, because then half your battle is won, So that's quite important, to make sure what kind of a person you want, what kind of an attitude. So once you get the person, then yes, of course, you need to do what needs to be done to retain the person, and based on their skill sets. And if your requirements are different, then training them is vital, because each company may have different points of what they require. What Vickum wants, maybe not what Jetwing wants, or what Cinnamon wants, or maybe Vickum's standards are. So accordingly, I think you will have to retrain them. You have to get them into that same culture of your company. So that takes a lot of effort. And then, of course, retaining. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, salary levels have become a fairly important factor for retention. But having said that, there are people also who stay with companies, even in spite of higher salaries being offered, there are people who stay with them. So those are the lucky ones, I think, who will want to stay with the brand or with the management of that, because they say you leave companies, but you don't leave managers, or you leave managers and you don't leave companies. So I think manager, the CEO of the company, or the manager of the hotel units plays an important role in this, in my opinion.
So if you look at, I 100% agree with Shiromal as well. It needs to be based on your needs. But I think if you look at Sri Lanka as a whole, the talent in the industry has been a problem even before pandemic. How I say is, like, if you look at a typical applicant who comes to the industry, anyone coming, it's not the cream of the graduates who are coming. It's like the third, fourth tier who comes in. Even if you look at now there are multiple degree programs within the universities for tourism management. Even those are not the top of the class from A-levels. That goes, they still go to commerce and IT and finance and whatever else, and then you get people left out, honestly, coming into these programs where they just want to do a degree. So that has to change for us to really move forward, to really get this industry to where it should be. And I don't know why it's not being communicated by the industry to the potential employees, potential young people, because pre-pandemic, we were bringing in about $5 billion worth of foreign revenue, and that's if you take it as a net, that's the second biggest contributor to the economy. It's not even apparel. But so talking of apparel actually has given us an example. If you look at 30 years back, apparel was looked upon as a kind of in a derogatory term, like this to be kind of ladies. That's the way we used to talk about the industry. But the industry was able to really revolutionize it and become the most sexiest industry and the top talent that is really going into it. So we can do it. But one thing is, again, it comes back to economics as well, because most hotels, again, pre-pandemic, didn't make money. So when you're not making money, you can't pay the kind of salaries to attract the right people. So it's a bit of a kind of chicken and egg situation where we need to upgrade our products and make money so that we can get right people and retain them. But I think we have to strategically think of it as a country, how we galvanize the youth to understand the importance of the industry that we can pay over the next 5 to 10 years and have real programs where we get the cream into the industry.
Earlier, traditionally, Sri Lankans were going only to Middle East, but then now even European countries are opening their door, especially for the very highly skilled chefs and the highly engineers and highly skilled people. So there is a drain that takes from Sri Lanka. This actually has created a huge vacuum. I mean, in our properties, we have thousands of vacancies, and we're actually sometimes struggling to find relevant people. So even to find this competent staff, skilled or semi-skilled staff, is going to be very difficult in the current context. So therefore, it's very important that there is some sort of employer branding for tourism, so that people actually have the willingness to join, from parents to the students, from the time of they do their A-levels and when they leave. And the second one is actually, there needs to be a look at some sort of a highly skilled people. If you don't have in Sri Lanka, there needs to be a mechanism to find some from even overseas, because the plants will have to run it. And we have to look at our visa policies, etc. during this time. Of course, we can always create and train, and then of course send it to them, places like Middle East, Qatar, who are getting ready for the World Cup and football championship, and they need a lot of people. So once they get the exposure, they can actually come back later on. It's another way of looking at it. But overall, human resources seems to be a huge challenge. One of the top challenges within the top 3 challenges that we are facing post pandemic.
Some interesting thoughts, and I hope policymakers would seek to address that. I think one of the things that you can also look at from another industry, that is IT PM industry, from which I have worked, is been associated with is the branding. I think particularly for the BPO industry, it was very difficult to get in employees, but over time I think we've managed to change the narrative around how it is perceived, and I think that's something that gives us some hope as well. Come to you, Shiromal. Sustainability beyond just environmental sustainability, to encompass everything, including a sustainable supply chain, has been part of the Jetwing story for a long time. And I think in a post-pandemic era, where value-driven, purpose-driven tourism is going to be a very important aspect of the entire tourism and leisure industry. How can sustainability be part of the Sri Lankan tourism story?
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry about the background. I'm going black and white, so apologies. I think sustainability is going to be a vital thing. It is not going to be, it is, whether pandemic or no pandemic, because we don't have sustainable tourism. I don't think we can take tourism forward. But unfortunately, in my humble opinion, most of us don't understand what sustainability is. It's like the eco, there was a time when you spoke of eco, and then it was just you paint your hotel green and you're an eco lodge.
I think moving forward,
it is,
we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice because it's climate change and many other elements that comes in. Consumerism has actually going through the roof. But in the meantime, certain values are coming back. If you look at the behavioral pattern of the millennial traveler, there seems to be looking at more values. and they try to understand, appreciate the brands that basically have a certain values in their behavior. So this is what we call a term is consumer admiration or the customer admiration. So the brands that is admired by customers have a longevity in terms of preference, in terms of how they want to associate it. So this is a trend that we have seen, and this was there already, but this actually COVID-19 accelerated this need, and there's no choice of that. We need to be conscious of our environment, our planet, our people, etc. So everything what we do, and otherwise there won't be a planet for the future. So it's our responsibility as a responsible people when you're building it, when you're operating it, as much as possible to be sustainable. It's not only the environment, it's also about the people, triple bottom line approach. We understand how we can actually get it backward linkages, community benefits. So it's time to think all these areas. And if you don't think, then what happens is you are basically ruining a product or a service that is already available for you to generate revenue.
Yeah, Vickum, how can sustainability be part of our tourism journey?
I mean, again, as Shiromal said, it's not about being part; it's a must. It's not about a marketing tool anymore. It's essentially survival of all of us. And if you are thinking of, oh, by doing this I can attract a few more dollars, that's not the way to go about it. It should be in your DNA. And for us, especially when we talk about wellness, what we are actually talking about is sustainability, and we have taken the traditional idea of sustainability one level further, and we focus on actually how humans needs to be sustained so that we can take care of the rest of the world. Because we are at a position today as a world where we are struggling to get day by day, and pandemic has even worsened that situation. So wellness for us is all about taking care of you as a human so that you can take care of the rest of the world. So it's absolutely fundamental to us as well, and it should be for everyone else in the industry. Otherwise, there's not going to be an industry.
Thanks, Vickum. I want to elaborate a bit more on that concept that you referred to in terms of wellness. I know a few people who've been, burnt out during the pandemic, work right through virtually and otherwise. I'm looking forward to, the period after this where they can recover and rejuvenate themselves. So if you are an operator and you haven't really focused on wellness before, and wellness was trend well before COVID, and I think players like you have capitalized on it. How can you reposition yourself to have an increased focus on wellness as a selling point and a unique proposition in terms of your own entity?
Go for products like wellness and spaces and things like that, where there's a term for slow travel. So the market, I jokingly say that we kind of knew that COVID was coming when we conceptualized Santani, because it's an ideal product and the numbers show it as well. So, unfortunately, what COVID has told us is that people who were old or who had predisposed conditions are the ones who didn't make it. And that's a great relationship between being fit enough or the best person you can be versus the ability to sustain something like this. So this is essentially evolution and survival of the fittest. And it really drove the fact that if you are fit enough, when you stay fit today, it's not just about physical fitness. It's about physical, spiritual, and mental fitness. You need all three to get through today. So as long as you're fit enough in that sense, you have a better chance of surviving this COVID or whatever else that comes in the future. And that is what human sustainability, as I said, is all about. The whole idea of Santani is to get our guests to a higher state, both, in all three, spiritually, physically, and mentally, than when they came in. And when they get to that state, they're a better person. And when you're a better person, the whole world, the community gets better, the whole world gets better. And then it kind of has that snowballing effect. So pandemic kind of gave us a boost. and it's interesting. I was running some numbers we were talking about. I told earlier, we are running at about 60% occupancy for December. On pre-pandemic also, December was about 75%, 75 to 80%. So we are almost there. And if you look at the numbers from April we had, as a country, we had about 4,100 odd tourists who arrived in the country. which represents about a 3% occupancy if you extrapolate the 42,000 rooms we have registered. But at Santani, again, we had about 26% occupancy in April. And that's like 8 times. And that's not just, it's not about our brand itself. It's a case with all kind of wellness properties who are focusing on slow travel, who are providing that mental luxury to your mind. Because we have been stuck inside rooms or confined spaces for so long. I mean, we are not people like that. We are outgoing people. Humans have that the need for interaction. But staying in a place like that made them, I think, value the space and nature even more. So it became a really, really good opportunity for us. So we didn't really have to reposition. I think the market actually repositioned to products like ours, I would say.
Excellent. I hope that I'm absolutely sure that the trend will continue. Shiromal, Dileep, focus on wellness?
Of course, according to the Global Wellness Institute, the travelers who are going for wellness is 90% of their idea is actually to have wellness means equal to having a spa treatment. That's the understanding. But they have another 10% which is a hardcore who are moving into these places. The term wellness has actually given a new meaning after post pandemic, and it's becoming a sort of again a term which people like to follow. And the properties that have that edge actually can really gain, especially Sri Lanka as a destination has a sort of strong association. We have Ayurvedic, we have Helavedikam, we also have the various other wellness aspects of the country which can really attribute to the people who are coming to the country, and it can be actually a differentiator as well. Especially if you look at it, Kerala, etc., is not doing well for the moment for these reasons, but we can actually capitalize it quickly if we go out there. So especially from the European market, there's a demand, and if the required standards, etc., comes in, I think this is especially in a niche area and a lucrative area too, in order for us to differentiate ourselves and get some numbers in.
Yeah, I agree with both Vickum and Dileep. It's obviously going to be a very important segment. We also have a purpose-built Ayurveda property. So in addition to that, I think immunity boosting, because as Dileep said, we have lots of Sri Lankan traditional methods of boosting our immunity, even the food we eat, the meditation, the yoga. So lots of these elements they were there already, as Vickum said, but they can be enhanced, and people can be informed about the importance of all of that. And I think we also have a fair amount of these medication, or I don't know whether one should call, that is produced locally, which is very good. So I think there is a new segment that has also opened up, as Vickum was alluding to, that we can attract different clientele for sure. Not just the older people who used to come before, but even the younger ones who want to build their immunity and just wellness and feel good and just be confident about living, I think. Yeah.
Just to add to what Dileep said, I think there's a huge opportunity as a country, because most of the wellness destinations in this region, from India to Thailand to Indonesia, are closed at this point even. So if we can get our act together and communicate that, at least that part, rather than waiting for all these global campaigns, because these opportunities are going to go in the next 3 to 6 months. So we need to do whatever we are doing in that aspect now, and I think Sri Lanka will benefit so much.
I think the urgency is definitely there. At least the short term, rush in terms of wellness might recede, but I think long term, everybody recognizes that it is a trend that will last as well. Another trend that will last well is the impact of digital. And I want to come to you, Dileep, in terms of how it has revolutionized travel and tourism in unprecedented ways. This is not just about digital marketing, but also in terms of how the entire journey of the traveler is now highly digitized. And how have you all used digital, and how should the industry as a whole capture the opportunity from presented by digitalization?
Requirements that was actually it was happening anyway before COVID, and this is again a byproduct of COVID where it's accelerated. big time. So first thing is the requirement of people to have that, we call it touchless check-in, check-out process, and where we establish this touchless aspect with the hotel and keeping this high-tech and high-touch kind of a thing, or the low-touch kind of situation currently. So that's came in. So this actually what happens with a lot of innovations came in. So we saw that a lot of people are moving into, rather than going for a traditional check-in, that completely contactless check-in processes that have been adopted right throughout. Even the back end, what we need to do in terms of preparation in clear, and also if your F&B area and then housekeeping area, the new elements that came in terms of cleaning of the rooms, preparation of foods, to ensure that the safety standards are being given right throughout. So these are actually good moves. But of course, on the other hand, what you need to understand is that some of these solutions also coming at a cost. So we can't embrace everything in technology because, as we said, if you're going to get only 70 rooms, $70 per room, there's a limit that you can invest per a room. If you like to have contactless ACs, contactless TVs, and all the voice recognition devices that can be looked into, all that is possible. So one thing is we need to understand what kind of investment that we can go in. But that's why again we come to the vicious circle of try to position the country and get a high yield to the destination so that some of these things can be given. Otherwise, if you have cutting the cost and really can get a certain amount of budget travelers, then you might not be able to achieve what you need to do. So having said that, the technology, yes, we have embraced. I mean, our group has given a lot of prominence into that and gone through many aspects of it, starting basically from the websites that we are currently using, all the tools that we are using in order to booking, and then of course optimizing our revenue, etc. From there onwards into the hotel operation. So all those areas and the entire customer journey, that the various options have been introduced by various companies and who actually not even looked at it, inventing something like this before. So we had the opportunity of going through some of the stuff and then embrace. But of course, cost is always a component that determine whether we would actually go for a full transformation or at least step-by-step approach. So having said that, it's a challenge for the small and medium-time enterprises because it's additional cost, but it is a must in the future because that also gives so much of efficiencies, so much of ease to do, especially the marketing, etc. that comes in. So there are campaign management tools, the CRM tools that were there before as well. But of course, the usage have been accelerated after COVID, as well as your customer-facing technology components that the hotels can introduce.
Digitalization and how can we handle?
Add a little bit, say again, whatever we do with this technology or whatever we do, again, go back to your customer because it's not about just adapting a solution because it's there. Like in wellness, we have a lot of people who are running away from technology. And what they want is human touch, human interaction. So in a case like that, if you try to add all these gadgets, it kind of is counterproductive. So I mean, there's so many solutions, but understand what your product is and your customer is, then work on the solutions that's right for you.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with both, but I think the millennium or the young traveler is so digital savvy and they I don't think they know anything other than doing everything on their little iPhone. So if we don't give them that, what they require, we may be kind of setting off one entire market segment. But having said that, I agree with Dileep that the COVID, the pandemic accelerated the use of digital technology. But at the same time, for travel, I think more and more people are going to travel advisors, going to tour operators, because right now there is so much uncertainty around. And, so they need an assistant. They need somebody in case of trouble, to find out what needs to be done. Everything is changing. It's so dynamic. So I think as a result, they seem to be going to travel advisors. But having said that, long term, it is very important.
Thank you. I think one of the suggestions I think that the industry should look at is also, we have a lot of software, particularly software developers in our country, and they come up with many solutions for the travel and tourism industry, though I think the focus has always been external because obviously for margin, but I think they should look at Sri Lanka as a testing ground at some of the products. And I think the industry also needs to embrace them, and they need to embrace industry as well. I think that could be a win-win, something that both the industry bodies, SLASCOM, and the tourism industry can work together and have a look. I think that could be a way forward in terms of reducing the cost of implementation. I have a final general question to all of you, and you all have to be patient in terms of your time. Look, we are an island nation, and something that has been encompassing the whole world and impacting the whole world is climate change. And I think everybody is now finally waking up to the reality of it and its impact. And as an island nation, it's both an opportunity and a risk for us, right, in terms of climate change. How should the industry embrace it? What is the role it has to play in terms of mitigation? How should it, use the opportunity that climate change and the focus on climate change has been happening to reposition again the country, because again this is also another opportunity to reposition us as a country. Anyone can go first.
So okay, ladies first, right? So I would think maybe see, I mean, greening, we had a lot of forest cover before, and we've lost it, or we are losing it rapidly. We are losing parts of the man-made tanks for walking tracks. So we need to be aware, we need to understand, as you said, the impact of these short-term decisions, and try and maybe grow as much as possible.
I think it's becoming again a key decision-making thing that we need to look at when you're doing everything, because it's real. It's going to impact even like within 5 years at Santani. How the rain patterns have changed for us is significant, and so now, I mean, from as a hotelier or a developer, when you're making decisions on to where to locate a particular hotel, you need to almost simulate weather patterns and understand how that will impact, because you may take decision based on today's climate, but in 5 years down it will be completely different. So it has become that imperative to really understand how more climate change is going to impact, because for water, electricity, all of these things are then dependent on some of those locations. And if that characteristics of the location changes, your whole model that you initially had is going to change. And that can create a benefit as well as a disaster. So it's really important we take this really, really seriously. Apart from trying to mitigate climate change, we need to make it as one key decision-making input in developing the industry.
Yeah, back Shiromal. Yes, please go ahead.
We should start growing stuff and maybe greening spaces as much as possible. I think I heard Vickum say about the water bodies. We have so much of it. We should try and protect it as much as possible. We need to educate our younger generation, so it should be a part and parcel of the curriculum. So we need to do as much as we can and educate ourselves as well, how important it is, not for everything, for our food, for our sustenance, for we need it. Otherwise, we'll be like the dinosaurs.
Climate change is a hot debate in every tourism platform. World Tourism Organization has adopted this as one of the top priorities. So do PATA and then WTTC. The reason is that the tourism are mobilizing themselves. We mobilize them to destinations, to places in order to experience something unique. The impact that they're going to have from the entire climate change, by not some of these properties being accessible, or at least the same visual impact that they used to give, is a huge concern. So which means that the places that once upon a time considered as beautiful and attractive will no longer be considered as a result of that. So this can happen fast. It can actually ruin the very same old property or the locations that we are promoting. So we have a responsibility. Not only, again, looking at sustainability area, we have a responsibility in everyone in the industry, as well as the visitors, as well as the suppliers, to ensure that we do not actually harm too much on the environment. So therefore, moving forward from a legislative perspective, it's important that there are very strong guidelines that are available, and those guidelines have to be ensure that we are sustainable and then more in line with the climate change, and also recognize the properties that are embracing these best practices, environment best practices, to reduce the entire impact of climate change, and then also actually encourage them so that there is a commercial aspect of it. So currently what is the gap is that the climate change is, for a lot of people, is a concept. They don't understand how that can be linked into a commercial success or a commercial planning process. So that's a gap again that needs an awareness for people, how it can be done. And specialists, we have seen that in our hotels, when we operate immediately more sustainable measures, it has an immediate bottom line impact. So I think these solutions also needs to come in through that, so people have more receptive to embrace this. But nevertheless, if you don't act on this, there won't be a product for us to promote in the future. So it's very in the interest of everyone that climate change actions needs to be embedded into your overall constructions, marketing, operations, so that you give better in terms you become a responsible citizen, and people will love it, because then that will give you an opportunity for you to tell a beautiful story about your product, about your services to the rest of the people and say, we are about this. And we have seen such properties have gathered a lot of momentum in the past.
Thank you. We're out of time for today, but we've had a fascinating conversation that covered a large area of concern to the tourism industry as it recovers and positions itself for stronger growth in the post-pandemic era. Thank you so much for your time, Shiromal, Dileep, and Vickum. And thank you, the viewer, for tuning in today. And I hope that you will join us for another webinar in the series Restart 21, organized by the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom and in partnership with EconomyNext and EconomyNext magazine. Thank you and have a great day.